You are listening to the global network of podcasters dedicated to the pharmacy profession. Welcome to the Pharmacy Podcast Network.
Welcome to the PBM Reform Podcast, where we dive deep into the world of pharmaceutical benefit management, cutting through the noise to uncover the truth. Since 2019, we've been your go-to source for the latest on how PBMs impact patient care, drug pricing, and the very future of pharmacy. Here, we champion the role of pharmacists, the most knowledgeable advocates for medication safety and expertise. Join us as we expose and generate discussions that are reshaping healthcare and explore how we build a better payment system which focuses on advancing pharmacy care.
Welcome to the PBM Reform Podcast here on the Pharmacy Podcast Network. My name is Breck Rice, and I'll be your host today. And I have the privilege of working with community pharmacies now for over 20 years. And I love community pharmacies. I'll do everything I can to help. But I know that some of these past years have been pretty hard on community pharmacies, and we have none other than the PBMs to blame for that. And so it's been my pleasure also to host the PBM Reform Podcast and bring in people who are working in the industry, people who are lawmakers, people from associations that have pull in PBM reform. And it is a really important work, but it's a really slow process, it seems like, to make changes. You know, some days I feel like a little guy in a rowboat out there chiseling away at the big iceberg that the Titanic's about to run into, and I'm making progress, but it's really slow progress. And so whenever we have the opportunity to avoid that iceberg, we're going to be better off for it. And so that's why I'm excited to talk about our visit with our guest today, who has found a way to avoid some of those icebergs and make sure that his pharmacy can continue to be profitable and successful. So today I'm honored to speak with Dr. Michael. Dr. Michael Muniz is the owner of My New RX. Nutritional Pharmacy, Compounding, and Health and Wellness Center. He's a committee member at IPA and the past president of the Texas Pharmacy Association. So welcome to the program, Dr. Michael.
Thanks, Breck. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so tell me more about your pharmacy. This is quite the expansion beyond just a traditional retail pharmacy. You know, a lot of pharmacies have stepped into compounding and custom medications, but you've taken it even a step further with nutrition and wellness. Tell me more about your pharmacy.
Yeah, so we're a pharmacy. We opened up during COVID, which is a scary time for anybody to open, but we've done a lot of different things. I'm always about, pushing the boundaries of what pharmacy can do. So we're cash only, no PBMs, contracts here. We were working on getting some contracts with Medicaid to take care of, the children with some of our medications that we compound. It's working with vendor drug, but, sometimes you start moving fast and then it slows down, right? So we do a lot of different things, a lot of hormone replacement therapy. That's always big in a compounding pharmacy. But then, we work with dentists, we work with aesthetics clinics, we work with different types of providers to answer questions. So in addition to being a pharmacist, I actually have a fellowship in metabolic nutritional medicine with the American Academy of Anti-Aging and Regenerative Medicine. So a lot of the doctors that don't have that type of training contact me for help with their patients, and then often refer patients over to us. So we do a lot of consultations. We make our compounds. We spend a lot more time one-on-one with patients, so that way they understand what they're taking and why they're taking it. I was doing a lot of the traditional pharmacy before, and with my family's pharmacy before, but never really had enough time to be able to do the things that I'm doing now, and actually seeing a big impact with patients. So Yeah, going back to when we first started, COVID hit. I got asked to go run in the COVID hospital in El Paso, so I went to go run the COVID hospital in El Paso. My business partner, who's also a pharmacist, stepped in and was covering everything. I would do a lot of the consultations remotely if I needed to. Then we were also we started doing the monoclonal antibodies, such Regeneron and bebtelovimab. We're doing a lot of those different antibodies for COVID patients. We oversaw the ones in El Paso. Then, my other business partner in the clinic side, Vanessa Covarrubias, she was running the infusion center here in Harlingen. And then our pharmacy was actually helping the state with the drug to be able to get it from all the different location sites and hold it and store it. And so we worked with them. And in total, in the Rio Grande Valley, I think we infused close to 13,000 patients with COVID. So it was a good time. We did a lot of good things. And then, let's go back into functional medicine, treating patients and trying to figure out what what is the common problem with all these patients, right? And trying to fix them. And so that's what makes us a little bit different is like we're not really waiting for the doctors to send us the orders. We're pretty much just telling the doctors, how can you help my patient? Then we're there. Okay, this is how we step in. So I have probably close to 10 providers that send me patients on a daily basis. And they're all different types of doctors and different location sites here as well. So it's great. It's a totally different type of deal. You get to do 30 or 40, compounds a day, and none of the compounds you're doing at a loss.
Oh, because it's cash pay. You're not having a medication walk out the door below the acquisition cost.
Yep, 100%.
And unfortunately,
I don't have to worry about any kind of max or anything like that, and then carrying these high-priced drugs. I know there's a lot of pharmacies in the area that even stop carrying brand name drugs just because their reimbursement rates are just so bad. So.
Yeah. So first off, where my new RX, where are you located?
We are located in Harlingen, Texas, which is the southern tip of Texas. I know a lot of people ask where it's at. So I tell them South Padre Island because we're probably about 30, 45 minutes from South Padre. Yeah. Some other people think it's El Paso, and I'm like, no, El Paso's west of where we're at. We're like further south. So the southern tip of Texas.
Yeah. So most people think of the highway, I guess, Highway 10 that comes through Texas and El Paso being, that's right next to the border of Mexico. So that must be both southern point. No, the Gulf of Mexico curves all the way down another, I don't know, a couple hundred miles, right?
Yeah, it's a couple hundred miles. Probably, I think at least from San Antonio to Harlingen is about 270 miles.
Yeah.
And so if you think about from Houston, it's going to be a little bit longer, maybe 300 miles or so. So
yeah.
From El Paso, it's about a 12-hour drive down to Harlingen from El Paso.
Wow. Yeah. So Texas goes all the way down. Yeah.
Yep.
That's great. So wonderful work that you've been doing, helping patients. You found a way to bypass the PBMs to get the fair reimbursements that your pharmacy deserves. Tell me more about your wellness side. What are you doing in the health and wellness side? Because it really is a custom medicine approach, but are you doing anything looking at like preventative health, doing any kind of screenings?
Yeah, so we're doing some of that on the wellness side. I'll talk about the way we used to do it before is we had a contract with one of the local labs. The local lab, we would send the patient over, and since it was a pharmacist ordering the labs, they were cash pay for the patients. That's allowed. Pharmacists out there can use companies like Rupa Health to kind of see what different types of labs are available. Sometimes you need to have a collaborating physician to help, but Rupa has a lot of those people on board as well to help sign off on the orders if need be. So we were doing a lot with the local lab that we set up an agreement with. Patients would go in, pay their $25 for certain labs, and then we would sit here and we would talk to them about it. We would do some point of care testing, but the point of care testing we did was more for infections like strep, flu, COVID, Never really did any of the A1Cs and stuff. And to me, it was just all about reimbursements and carrying the the equipment, the test, and doing all the CLIA stuff that's required. And if there's not enough volume, it's like there's really no point in doing it. So we just got partnered up with that local lab, and they were giving us some really good deals for our patients. And then we would review them and then tell them like, hey, you know what? Here's an issue. This is how we're going to fix it. But then we also look at things that the doctors aren't looking at, and that's another big thing. So we'll be looking at homocysteine levels, right? So down here, we talk to some of the doctors, and a lot of our doctors tell us, that are in academia and they're the ones that do like research and learn different things. They're like, man, we wish more doctors would run homocysteine levels on patients, because homocysteine is an inflammatory amino acid that's in your body naturally. And a lot of times it's elevated in patients that can't methylate. So you just start talking about like pharmacogenomics or just genetics, right? Genetics in general, and their body can't metabolize the homocysteine down to methionine the way it should. And so then that becomes an issue, right? And so we look at those and try and help patients, because every point above an 8, so there's a range, I think goes up to 14 or 15, but an optimal range in functional medicine is going to be under 8, sometimes under 7. And the reason you want to do that is because every point above an 8, and this has been in studies, show that you have a 10% increased risk of having a heart attack and stroke.
Mm-hmm.
So when patients go to the hospital and they have normal cholesterol, and it's like, well, we're going to put them on a statin. It's like, wait, what was their homocysteine level? And why aren't you addressing that? Then the other thing too is looking at one of the other big factors or conditions that it can cause is it can increase your risk of Alzheimer's and dementia as well. Because as it's going down and it's hitting the arterial walls, it's causing the arterial walls to clamp down and close. And by closing, you're now decreasing blood flow to the brain.
Yep.
So you're not getting the nutrients and all the other stuff that you need to. So, that's one simple lab that we do. And then there's no drug to fix it, but there's supplements that you can use to fix it, right?
Mm-hmm.
To help with it. And so we will put patients on different types of methylated B vitamins. And then what we'll do is we'll redraw their levels, usually in a month, to kind of see how they're doing. And we've had one patient drop from a 25 to a 9 in 3 weeks. So
Wow.
we know it works. Even though he had all the other stuff, he was on statins, he was on blood pressure meds, and doing all these different things to try and prevent his risk of a heart attack. They weren't looking at one of the other biggest factors that's there. And then when we looked at his genetics, well, he had an MTHFR SNP, he has an MTR SNP, an MTRR SNP. And all of those are red, which he was probably the first person I've seen all 3 of those red. So we're like, there's no methylation really going on. He needs all the support that he needs. And so by doing that, we're able to see the levels come down. So looking at the wellness side, there's a lot of labs that pharmacists can do. And I think if we were able to find a testing company that we could work with that will do it all based off of like a finger stick, and then you mail it in and get results within a day or 2, that'd be great, because a lot of these aren't immediate things that need to be addressed. Patients aren't coming in with chest pain, and they're not coming. No, they're just coming like, I want to be healthy. I know there's something wrong with me. I feel there's something wrong. Help me out, right?
Right.
And so that's what we were doing on the wellness side. So back in 2019, here in the state of Texas, we got a bill passed, and the bill allowed pharmacists to bill insurance companies for the services they perform, right? So the bill actually said that pharmacists can bill. They put us pretty much in the insurance code. We were in the occupations code for a while, so we were considered practitioners or providers, but we were not considered it in the insurance code. So the insurance company said, well, you're not in the insurance code, so we don't have to see you as that. So we got that added into the insurance code. My local state rep was the chairman of the insurance committee. So spoke with him on what pharmacists are doing and stuff. And he's like, all right, let's see what happens, see what opposition we get. And luckily there was no opposition to it. They were like, well, the pharmacists are already doing these things. We're not expanding their scope of practice or anything like that. Like, yeah, they should be reimbursed for the services they're performing. So then another bill, this was the main bill that we got past from our side was just mainly saying that insurance companies could not deny a service if it was performed by a pharmacist if another provider was paid for that exact same service.
Hmm.
In other words, so an E&M visit, an office visit, if they're going to pay a doctor for that or a nurse practitioner, a PA, they're going to pay them for that visit. If a pharmacist performs that same visit, that same CPT code, they cannot deny it because it was performed by a pharmacist. So what the insurance companies are doing now on the medical side is they're pretty much saying, well, you're out of network, so we're not going to pay for it if the patient needs to pay for it. We will only process the claim if you're an in-network provider. And that was with Blue Cross Blue Shield Federal, and so we're like, okay, so how do we get into network, right? So we're always trying to find how do we get into these networks, right?
Yeah.
And so one of the latest things that we started doing was opening up a clinic and seeing, okay, how do we do it from a clinic standpoint, right? And seeing, okay, how do we get pharmacists to be providers within a clinic and still be able to be in network through that provider's office. We're working on that right now. We have a couple of things, one with Blue Cross to try and get us in. We're still waiting for some correspondence from them so that way we can see how that goes. But once those things are up and running, of course, those are things that we want to push out to all the other pharmacists, like, hey, this is how you do it. This is the blueprint. This is how you get things done. And this is all within the state of Texas, right? I know there's certain states that already have certain laws that allow things. But for here, this is what we do, is just constantly trying to think, okay, how do we move the needle for pharmacists? So the wellness side, supplements, we do all those things. We sell quite a bit every day. Genetic testing is another thing we do on the wellness side. So a lot of times I'll take your genetics from 23andMe, Ancestry.com, or we have a methyl detox test that we can do. It's just a little bit more pricier. That one only gives us about 5 genetic SNPs. The good thing is genetics, they don't have to be your destiny, right? That's what I've heard people say. It's like, no, you can overcome those problems. And so when we're looking at genetics, we're mainly looking at the deficiencies that your body has, right? I'm not there looking to see, oh, you have the BRCA gene, so you have a higher risk of developing breast cancer. Well, it's like, okay, well, let's decrease the inflammation, let's decrease the environmental toxins, that your body has. So instead, I'm more looking like, okay, what are the nutrients that your body's going to be deficient in because genetically you can't do it, right? And so those are the things that we start doing. And when we start seeing patients, with those crazy results, like I can tell you about one patient, she had a lot of anxiety, depression. She would not leave her house. It was bad. They tried different SSRIs. They were trying to regulate her hormones. They're doing all this stuff. And I was working with her husband, who's also a physician. And then I was also working with Vanessa, my business partner, on the clinic side. And what we actually did is like, hey, genetically your body can't methylate. So we started giving her high dose methylated B vitamins, and we're talking about 15 milligrams of methylated B9, right? And 1 milligram of methylated B12. And these are things that we compound here at the pharmacy. We started doing this for her. And within 7 days, she was leaving the house. Her husband was like, I've never seen something like this happen. He's like, I want you to take care of my daughter because my daughter has thyroid conditions. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay. And he goes, yeah, she had a miscarriage, it's not whatever. And I'm like, okay, sure enough, she had the same genetics as her mom. So then we're like, okay, well, we want you to start doing this. Her thyroid pretty much resolved, no issues, after doing that. Then she got pregnant probably about 3 months later, and she already had her baby here recently. So,
oh, wow.
And it's all we did was replace the nutrients that these patients are deficient in, right? And they feel the difference, right? And that's the thing. It's like, I'm not selling these things because people come in all the time. They're like, oh, well, I heard that, let's say berberine is good for controlling blood sugar. Yeah, it is. But what's your blood sugar?
Right.
What are you doing? Like, are you monitoring those things? What's your insulin level? And insulin level is another test that we run that none of the doctors locally really run it. They run an A1C, but A1C is different from insulin, right? Mm-hmm. You can have an elevated insulin, like 30, optimal should be about an 8, and your A1C is a 5.2, and it's like, yeah, it's only a 5.2 because your insulin is so high. And then eventually your pancreas is going to give up, your insulin's going to come down, your A1C is going to go up. And it's like, oh, you're diabetic now. And it's like, yeah, but you could have treated these patients way before that.
Right.
And so people should come in, they're like, hey, well, I saw on TikTok that there was berberine works very good. I'm like, yeah, but does it work for you? We got to look at your labs. But to me, that's a lab actionable. It's not a genetics actionable, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so when we're looking at our genetics, we're mainly looking at what are the actionables, which is different from pharmacogenomics. I love pharmacogenomics, but at the same time too, if we can just figure out what deficiencies the patients have in themselves genetically, we'd be like, look, your body can't produce methylfolate. It can't. So we're going to give you methylfolate for the deficiencies that your body can't produce. Okay. And no matter what we do, a lot of the methylation that happens in our body is that it has to keep wheels running. And when that slows down, it slows down so many other things. Like if you're not getting adequate amounts of methylfolate, you're not going to convert your tryptophan into 5-HTP. And then you need like some other cofactors to actually create your serotonin. And the only reason I'm bringing that back is because we're looking at depression. And so a lot of times we have people that come in, they're like, look, I've been on this for a long time. This, Lexapro or fluoxetine or whatever. And they're like, you know what, like I have depression. I'm like, okay, so then we look at their genetics and we can even run a neurotransmitter test. And like, well, no, you have adequate amount of serotonin. It's not really the serotonin that's the problem. You actually have another issue over here that this is what's causing the issue. And a lot of times it's basic methylfolate. There's a drug out there called Deplin, but insurance companies don't cover it. So then the patients are responsible, and it's like $100 and something, I think, for a month's supply of Deplin. So we compound it here, but we added another couple of different B vitamins, and we make it sublingual to allow quicker, faster absorption as well. So, so there's a lot of things. Sorry, I know I'm rambling because I can talk about what I do here because I love what I do here. So
no, you found a niche, and I guess what I want to know, Dr. Michael, is what brought you to that point to go just cash pay only and not go through the networks. I mean, there's got to be some impact that PBMs have had in your past experience that you said this is the way we're going to go.
Yeah, so when I worked at the family pharmacy, they do traditional retail pharmacy. I mean, they were doing close to 500, 600, 700 scripts a day.
Really busy pharmacy, yeah.
Yeah, and whenever I would see, prescriptions coming in at a loss, and then I would run reports, and I'd be like, man, we're losing on this one. The biggest one at that time, this was again back in 2018, 17, 18, was I used to really look at a bunch of the analytics, there. And Cigna HealthSpring was pretty much paying us 11% on average below acquisition cost, So I'm just like, if this is happening now, how long before all the other ones start doing the exact same thing? Because if it's legal for them, it's going to come down to where everybody else is going to start doing it. And I'm like, my time is worth a lot more than 30 cents, And so I started doing consultations with patients back in 2016. And then it just started growing and growing. So in 2018, in the pharmacy, we had another business called Crave Market. And Crave Market was pretty much a nutritional store. And what we were focused in on was giving people healthier food options, right? So we were carrying like Siete chips, which is gluten-free, vegan, didn't have a lot of ingredients, really good tasting as well. I would go to conferences. One conference I went to was called KetoCon in Austin, with ketogenic diets, kind of seeing what other products were out there. So a lot of the companies that we used at that time, actually, some of them closed down during COVID because everything, they couldn't sustain, their market.
Right.
And then HEB, which is, I love tremendously. I was actually trying to get them to carry a lot of the stuff that I wanted patients to have, and they never did it. So then I opened up my own, and then within probably about 4 or 5 months of opening, the store managers from HEB right around the corner from us started coming to shop where we're at. and kind of seeing like what we're carrying. And then we started seeing them carry those products. And I'm like, all right, cool. So, right. I mean, honestly, I'm probably about a block away from an HEB. And so, I just tell my patients like, look, we don't carry a whole lot much anymore because HEB carries a majority of it, and we can tell you what foods work, what foods don't work. But we're always about minimally processed foods, like good, clean, whole foods if possible. But going into that, it was just like, I'm worth all this. I have all this information. I've spent a lot of money on training in functional medicine. And for me to just say, okay, well, I'm going to accept a 30-cent reimbursement from an insurance company, I was like, no, that's not. Doctors don't do it for 30 cents.
Right.
They're paid for their services. And a lot of times their consumables are, table paper, cleaning the room, office staff, gloves. But that's generally about it, just depending on what kind of providers you're talking with. Right.
Right.
And so I'm like, if doctors aren't, doing things at a loss, why do pharmacists still think we have to do everything at a loss? And why do pharmacies still feel that we have to give away all our knowledge for free? And it's like, no, we don't. If you're coming to me for questions and you want answers, well, I'm going to give you the answers, but I'm going to charge you just the way a doctor would charge you as well.
Yeah.
And, patients have finally been able to say, you know what? Yeah, you're right. I'm okay paying you. I'm okay paying you for those things. I'm like, all right, let's go.
Okay. So what did the family pharmacy do? Did they have to make staffing changes? Did they have to make some cuts? How do you keep sustaining a loss like you experienced with the payers?
Yeah. I don't know what they've done ever since I left. I mean, that's been about it. I don't do any kind of consulting work with them, but I've done some work with some other providers or some other pharmacies looking at their numbers, and a lot of them have made those cuts. A lot of them are having to close down stores because some of them have like 3 or 4 stores. A lot of them can't carry brands. A lot of them are even losing their contracts with their GPOs because their GPOs, they're not hitting the metrics with their brand to generic ratio, And so, a lot of them, and it sucks that, PBMs are hitting the pharmacies with these things of, oh, well, you're too heavy on brands. Well, we're not the prescribers. If we were the prescribers, that'd be a totally different thing, but we're not the prescribers. So how can they keep dinging pharmacists for those things? I mean, the doctors are the ones prescribing. We're not, right? And so when they hit you with those, what is it called? GERs and stuff like that, it's just like, wow, you know what? Like, it's not us that are doing it. It's not the pharmacists or the pharmacies. It's your providers that are writing for the brand names. If it was not, I mean, majority of pharmacists out there will want generics. I know here at our pharmacy, I don't carry any brand name drugs. It's all generics.
Yeah.
And the generic drugs we carry are very limited. I think I have maybe 15 different generic drugs, and it's basic acute stuff, right? And so kid after hours, the doctor's calling me and like, hey man, I have this patient, because I work a lot with some DPC clinics, direct primary care clinics. They're like, and we need to get them something. The other pharmacies close, or CVS is charging them $20 for a Z-Pack. And I'm like, all right, just come by the pharmacy. I'll go open up real quick and get them the med that they need. So we work, with a lot of these providers and I tell them, I was like, look, a lot of times my price is going to be cheaper than a majority of the other people because I don't have the inflation of the insurance companies.
Yeah, I was just going to ask that. That was my next question, is that, the PBMs claim that they're lowering the costs for patients. But in your experience, is that just, a marketing spin?
Oh, yeah, it's a marketing spin. I mean, honestly, patients come in and they're like, well, they went to HEB and with their insurance, I think one of them was like olmesartan, right? Which is Benicar. And Benicar's been generic for a while. It's multi-source generic. And, they will go over there and they're like, oh, yeah, it was $30 for a 30-day supply. I'm like, what? I was like, you can get a 30-day supply here with me for $5. You can get a 90-day supply for $10. Yeah. They're like, really? No, I'm just going to come here from now. I'm like, yeah, I don't know what they're charging you and why they're charging you so much. But yeah, they say they're saving you money, but they're not saving you money at all. And the PBMs, if you think about it, they've grown so big that they've bought insurance companies, right? So they've morphed into insurance companies. And the way I tell people is like insurance companies, I hate to say it, they want to keep you sick. They want to keep you on these meds. And so if you've been diabetic, even though you've done changes to your nutrition and you're making a lot of other changes of exercise, and you're like A1C is optimal now, you're getting good results, and you've just taken away all this food, but we have a doctor that says, well, yeah, but you never reverse diabetes. Once you're diabetic, you're always diabetic. And I'm like, yeah, well, I have a patient that was diabetic. He was on 230 units of insulin for 15 years. He hasn't been on insulin for the past 8 years because I worked with him on his nutrition, all this stuff. So, but he's still diabetic? And they're like, well, yeah. And I'm like, and then you start looking at the reasons why is because the insurance companies through CMS and they have these metrics and stuff. And they say, oh, well, the sicker you make a patient look on paper, the more money we get reimbursed as a Medicare Advantage plan. So WellMed, which is owned by United Healthcare, they love to try and make patients look super sick on paper. The sicker we can make them look on paper, the more that they're going to get reimbursed. And then what comes along with that? Well, you know what? You're diabetic, so you need to be on a statin. You need to be on a ACE inhibitor, an ARB. You need to be on diabetes medication, right? So now you got patients on 3 different medications. Well, what did these insurance companies make their money from? How did Aetna get bought by CVS? By processing prescriptions.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So they don't want patients to not be on prescriptions. They want people on prescriptions because they're going to make a lot of money on these prescriptions. And then you start coming back on the things that the PBMs are, hiding behind and saying, oh, we're being transparent, we're saving costs and stuff. It's like, okay, so if you reimburse a pharmacy $5 for 30 tablets of metformin, what are you charging the payer? Right? The main person that's funding that for you to charge, what are you charging them? Well, you don't know because now they're vertically integrated, so they don't got to tell you what it is.
Yeah.
And it's proprietary information. You don't need to know that stuff. But again, if you really want real transparency, you got to work and try and get true transparency. And the PBMs right now are not being transparent at all.
No, there are PBMs that claim that they are transparent PBMs. I interviewed one, had a group on the PBM Reform podcast to try to better understand what their definition of transparent PBM was. So I know that's the goal to try to push that, but there's just too many billions of dollars being made by not being transparent, especially if you're, one of the big 3 that is controlling 80% of the lives. There's no benefit to them to be transparent because then people will see the spread that they're working off of. One of the other tactics, and I just found out about this, coming back from the National Chain Drugstore meeting in San Diego just a week ago. And we found out at that conference, we didn't see anything in the news. We didn't see anything, didn't get any notification. None of our pharmacy partners had gotten notification. But one of the big 3 PBMs actually canceled one of their networks and then just are rolling all those patients into their managed care. Now, this was on the workers' compensation side, so there was a higher reimbursement that needed to be paid because it was workers' comp. Well, by canceling that network and rolling it into to their other managed care networks, they probably are capturing several $1 million more per day by doing that, right? And so there's tactics and strategies that they're looking at constantly that will take more away from community pharmacies so that they can continue to make the profits that they need to make in order to share, to show their shareholders that they're being good stewards of that, of that investment, right? A similar situation happened, it was probably close to 10, 12 years ago, where the PBM had two separate networks. They had their managed care networks for the commercial plans and Medicare, and then they had a separate work comp network and did the same thing, canceled the comp network, just rolled all those patients in. Um, that's an area that obviously I focus on with workers' comp and seeing what is happening with the pharmacies. And usually it's a strategy that the pharmacy doesn't even realize because they're so busy filling scripts, they don't know if one is Medicare or workers' comp or whatever it is until you're pulling it up in the pharmacy system and having to send it to whatever bin you're needing to send that script to. But on the reimbursement side, it doesn't show up, right? Because it just blends right into all the other horrible reimbursements that you're getting at the pharmacy. You didn't realize that you just lost another $50 on that script because they rolled it into the managed care network instead of paying you the workers' compensation rate for that medication. What are some other tactics that you think community pharmacies need to be aware of and be on the lookout for that PBMs are kind of forcing on community pharmacies today?
I mean, I've been out of the loop for like 5 years, but working with IPA, the Independent Pharmacy Association, or Academy, which is within the Texas Pharmacy Association. Talking to a lot of those members and stuff and seeing, I mean, a lot of them are just, losing a lot of just the reimbursement. I think if the reimbursement was just fair, I think in Mississippi there was an audit that was done in their managed Medicaid, and it showed that independent pharmacies were paid, let's just say $1 a script, but all the regional chains and national chains were paid $7 to $8 the exact same script. So I mean, we're a country of capitalism, but at the same time, we're capitalism towards corporations. We used to be all about small businesses and loving small business and being here, but within the pharmacy pharmacy arena, I don't think it's happening. I think we're seeing more mom and pops close. And I remember back in the day, we would see a lot of kids selling their football posters and cheerleading posters, and they would come to the pharmacy, and the pharmacy had X amount of money just to buy these posters for these kids, or Little League, jerseys, and even Boys and Girls Club. And now a lot of them are like, I can't afford that anymore, and keeping money local is big, right? So to me, I see that and I'm like, well, how many people do these independents employ, right? And they'll be employing, I know at our other location, when I worked there at the other pharmacy, we had close to like 20 something employees, where CVS, they were, oh no, we only have like 10 employees. And it's like, well, yeah, and then where does all their profits go? And their profits go back to, Rhode Island or whatever, and then they go to the shareholders. So that's another big thing too, is, they're showing, oh, we're showing all these savings, we're doing this, we're being transparent, blah, 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 to their shareholders. But to the patients at the end of the day and the people that are taking care of them, they're not being transparent. They're not helping them out in any way. And then they go before Congress, and then Congress tries to drill them, and then they tell a totally separate lie. And it's just bad, man. I think pharmacy needs to just keep looking at other ways. I'm going to tell you right now, patients are looking for something new. We have about 15 patients of ours in the clinic that are physicians, right? And they come to us because they're like, we're tired of traditional medicine, and we want to make ourselves healthy, but we want to send you patients. So I've actually started working with some of these doctors. Like, I will teach you how to do this if you want to do this, right? And I will teach pharmacists how to do this, so that way they can teach their providers on how to do it. And you can increase money just in your OTC supplement sales. I think I would rather get paid. And this was another big thing I did too with TPA. They had a grant to do hypertension, and I was working with a DPC clinic. So I'm like, there's really no cost to your patient, but they come in, I get paid for consultation. If we need to change their meds, we'll change their meds. And he's like, all right, cool. He's like, I can't control these people's blood pressures. I'm going to send them to you. Like, okay. So I'm like, okay, well, I need this lab, and then we'll check blood pressure. And a lot of these patients were just deficient in magnesium. I was honestly treating them with a multivitamin and magnesium glycinate, and their blood pressures were coming down. I think it probably, it wasn't a big amount of people. So it was like 20 people, probably like 18 of those out of the 20 people had blood pressure drops just based off of that. Some of them had stress, and so we had to give them some, things for stress, adaptogenic herbs, try and help them out. And, they would do very well with that too. They're like, man, you know what? I feel great. And the doctor's like, well, I didn't know that you could just do things like that. And I'm like, well, let's start talking about, evidence-based medicine, right? So all the doctors love to say, oh, it's evidence-based medicine. That's what I'm doing, blah, 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 right? Yeah. And, even pharmacists that are more like in the academia and they're more like in the hospital settings and stuff like that, they're all like, oh, it's evidence-based medicine. Yes. Okay, let's go back to evidence-based medicine. And majority of, the guidelines out there for blood pressure, for diabetes, all that stuff, they always say address lifestyle modifications, nutritional deficiencies. But nowhere in those guidelines does it tell you what nutritional deficiencies to look for.
Right.
Right. And so they go straight to the med. And I'm like, but you didn't address those other things. So how are you practicing evidence-based medicine? Right.
Right.
And so that's where I'm pretty much like, for myself, is like, no, okay, I'm going to address the nutritional deficiencies. Yes, I may use a blood pressure med along with the other stuff, but the goal is to actually get them off of the blood pressure med, right? But I'm going to use it in the meantime as a helper, and then wean them off of that blood pressure med and see if we can just maintain them with just the deficiencies that they had. So I always tell people, like, you have gas tanks in your body, and your gas tanks need to be full. Your gas tanks are empty already because, you know what, like, our food sources are crap nowadays. Everything we're eating has zero nutritional value, even though they say, oh, there's nutritional value in this. A lot of the stuff is made from, plastics and whatever.
Ultra processed, yeah.
Ultra processed. And so we tell them, like, look, as long as you can increase your gas tanks, once your gas tanks are full, you're going to feel better. And sure enough, like, we have some doctors that, we give this multivitamin pack, and I actually have one in my pocket, and, it's right here. So that's a basic multi that we use, right? They take one of these every day, has methylated B vitamins, has all this other stuff. And the doctors that take it, they're like, man, I feel different when I take this compared to when I was taking the Centrum that I was taking. And it's like, well, no, because you're getting a lot of the basic nutrients that your body needs.
Right.
So it's all about nutrients. Like, our bodies, the way God made our bodies is amazing. We can do so many different things. It's just the things that we put in our body don't help us,
right.
And so once you start giving the proper nutrients, you start doing some of the basic things like cardio, breathing, little resistance training, all those different things to make things just function. It works. It's just back then we would see a lot of people, they were actually working the fields. They were, trying to make this country a better place. And now a majority of us just sit in an office, right? And we're not doing the extra stuff that we need to do, which we need to get back into doing.
To use your car example, and if you put bad gas in your car, it's not going to run very well, right? It's going to sputter and cough, and it's trying to process that bad gas. Well, that's the same thing with our food source. We're not getting the proper nutrition. We're not filling the tank, and so love what you're doing at your pharmacy, Dr. Michael. Amazing. We need more people as educated as you are in helping, to have better patient outcomes. Want to bring you back to an issue that we know one state is pushing really heavily to get PBM-owned pharmacies out of their state, with CVS and Arkansas. Do you think that will expand to Texas at some point?
I'm hopeful that it will, but I don't. There's a lot of players in Texas that I don't think that that's going to happen. Those big people, the big corporations, give a lot of money to a lot of the politicians here, even the higher up politicians. the ones that are running the state and stuff. And I don't see that happening. It should happen. It needs to happen. If
Yeah.
you really care about business and everything in your state, and you worry about the cost of healthcare in your state, it needs to happen. I think wholeheartedly, if that wasn't the case, we'd be in a totally different situation. Now, then I go back and start thinking about Mississippi thing again, and I'm like, okay, so they'll say, okay, well, we'll close all our stores, but we're going to pay the independents crap still. We're going to give HEB the money. We're going to give the other big people that are on our side the money, and screw them. But the other thing too that happens is their mail order facilities would have to leave Texas too.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and so I'm hopeful that politicians actually start opening their eyes. To a lot of the bad that's out there. And then they say, well, if we do that, we're cutting down, business, right? And we're, really big, for business, state, I'm like, yeah, but you're also killing all the other businesses.
Yeah. Yeah. The small businesses.
Yeah. The small businesses that are employing a lot more people. And then you start looking at the unemployment rates going up, and it's like, well, you have a lot of small businesses that are closing. That's why your unemployment rates are going up.
Yeah.
And because these big corporations, what do? A lot of times they just want to make things smaller in workforce to have bigger profits because they got to pay all their shareholders.
Yeah. Yeah,
You know?
and that's one of your biggest line items on your P&L is the what you're paying your employees, and so the more employees you have, the more expense. So yeah, so talking more about the lawmakers and how they might be influenced by a big PBM to not push them out of a state. I've always taken the philosophy that I think our lawmakers should adopt, kind of the NASCAR approach and wear a jersey that shows who they're sponsored by, So, hey, this lawmaker is sponsored by CVS. We know we're not going to be able to push the right agenda through them because that's who's financially backing them. I know there's a lot of misconceptions from the patient level that pharmacy is the one that is driving up the drug costs, and that's really a misunderstanding, right? That pharmacy has any control over what that cost of the medication is for the individual patient. So what would be the one thing that you would like to inform patients about, and how, PBMs really are affecting their life? Is it that cost? Is that how they control that and not the pharmacy? Or what would be the one thing that you would want to help educate, a non-pharmacy listener to this podcast?
Yeah, not pharmacy listener. I mean, I would tell you, contract, Mark Cuban has his cost plus pharmacy. You can go in there and you can kind of see what it is, Marley Drugs, has on their website, you can see what the cost of their stuff is. And then you go back and, even looking at whatever it is, we have some people that will call us like, hey man, what's the cost of this? And then we tell them like, well, this is our cost, and they're like, man, my pharmacy over here is charging me X amount of dollars. And I'm like, you got to do your shopping. It's just like you wouldn't go just to, the Nike store looking for the best price of shoes, right? You may go to Finish Line, Foot Locker, all these other places looking for your shoe, right? It's the same thing with the pharmacy. You got to look around, but I'll tell you at the end of the day, just because you go to the source, like if you're going to CVS, and CVS is the insurance company, you're not going to get the best deal per se, right? What they try to do and enhance, and get more patients to come is they say, well, you get a $5 copay if you come here, but it's $20 if you go over there. Right. So they're steering everybody to them. And patients are going to be like, oh, yeah, it's only $5 to me. And then the insurance or the employer is like, man, you know what? Like, it's cheaper for my patients. I'm going to go there. But at the end of the day, when you look at your bill of what you're getting, like, yeah, you're paying a higher premium because you're sending it to the same place,
Yeah.
I think a lot of it comes back to the employers and knowing what the employers are paying. I know, they were trying to pass, an employer plan here in Texas this past session. I don't think it moved anywhere. But at the same time, too, the problem majority of the time is not the pharmacies. The cost of the drugs. I mean, sometimes it is. I can honestly tell you. Here's another example is, with the other pharmacy that I worked with, and they were using another one of the big wholesalers, right?
Mm-hmm.
And their cost of, let's say, Tamiflu from that wholesaler was $65, and then you would pay it. The insurance would pay you $67 or whatever. Well, for me to buy that Tamiflu, it didn't cost me $65. Because I don't have any contracts with any kind of wholesalers or anything like that. So I'm not getting rebate money and all this other stuff.
Right.
So when you start talking about rebate money, it inflates the cost of the drugs, right?
Yeah.
Because you're getting them on the back end. Well, I'm over here buying them for $20, sometimes $19 a thing, selling them for $25. When you go to CVS and all these other people, they're going to charge you $80 cash for the exact same thing because their cost is a lot higher because of the rebate games that they play.
Yeah, and most patients don't understand or have any clue about any of those rebates and the the hitting your quotas with the wholesaler to make sure that you're getting those rebates back, and so that it's a very complex system. Certainly, the cash pay model makes a lot of sense to a lot of people, and what you're doing, Dr. Michael, and in fact, the ability to show somebody that they would pay the same out of pocket as what their copay would be going to another pharmacy is really catching on, and more pharmacies are looking at that. One of the biggest obstacles that we've removed and have accomplished in PBM reform is removing those gag clauses out of the contracts so that a pharmacist can actually tell the patient, hey, your cash price will actually be below what your copay, insurance copay is on this medication. So we are making progress. It is taking a lot longer time than we'd like it to, but we keep chiseling away at that big iceberg. So, hey, Dr. Michael, I want to do some fun facts with you. This is just rapid fire for our audience to get to know you personally a little more. Are you more of an early bird or a night owl?
Night owl. I mean, I do get up in the morning to work out occasionally, like at 5 in the morning, 5:30 to be there at 6, but I only do that maybe a few days out of the week. But I like doing nighttime stuff.
Okay, excellent. And do you prefer the mountains or the beach?
The beach. I'm like 45 minutes from the beach. I love it. I'm there right around the corner. I mean, I'm there all the time.
Excellent. Yeah, I love the beach as well. And do you prefer coffee, tea, or something else?
Tea. I used to like coffee, but then it started giving me a lot of acid reflux. So I actually drink a lot more tea nowadays, and different types of teas too, not just black tea, but yeah, tea is really good for you.
Okay.
Hibiscus tea is really good too. And that's one that you just boil some hibiscus leaves, and man, it tastes delicious as well. So
yeah, and there's some health benefits there too.
Yes, there is.
You could certainly give a course on that. So, well, thank you, Dr. Michael. It's been great to have you share your knowledge and wisdom with us today here on the PBM Reform Podcast on the Pharmacy Podcast Network. It's been great getting to know you better and understanding, your philosophies and what you are doing to try to help patients have better outcomes. So my name's Breck Rice. I'm always going to advocate for the heart of our community healthcare, which is our community pharmacists. And thank you for listening to the PBM Reform Podcast, everyone.
Thanks for having me on, Breck. It was great.
Yeah, it's great to have you here.
Yes, sir. Talk to you soon. Bye-bye.